Hi, everybody. This is Blaine DeSantis, and I welcome you to another edition of Books and Looks. Yes, it's our weekly voyage of discovery in the wonderful world of books, the best of history, mystery, fiction, and nonfiction that I've been reading, along with exclusive interviews with the authors of these books. You're going to find it only here on Books and Looks. And let's not forget our partner. That's right, booktrib.com. You want a review? You want anything bookish? You're going to go to booktrib.com. Today, we have a memoir for you. We have a memoir. I want to tell you, this is a memoir. At times, it gets a little disturbing, but it's a very, very fine book. A young American woman falls for a charming Saudi Arabian man, only to find herself trapped in a culture clash of epic proportions. Embark on a riveting journey from the glittering disco clubs of the 1970s Boston to the veiled world behind the walls in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia, as one woman fights against archaic traditions for love, for family, and for her very freedom. Jeddah Bride is a gripping true story of star-crossed romance, betrayal, and a mother's unwavering devotion that will leave you breathless and forever changed. I'm Blaine DeSantis. This is Books and Looks, and today we're talking to Patricia Bonis about her memoir, Jeddah Bride. Patricia Bonis, welcome to Books and Looks.
Thank you, and glad to speak with you, Blaine. I'm delighted.
Well, we're glad to have you here. You have a tale that I think is amazing. It's a memoir that I think everybody should be reading about, not just here in America, worldwide. We've got relatives over in England. Big culture clash with as you know, with the English, the Muslims, everything else. And so this is a very relevant book right now. So thank you for writing it. Let's begin with that. But when we turn to writing it, you open up with a scene, a really good opening scene of you reuniting with your son after having not seen him for 14 years. Now, there's a lot that's gone on. Why did you choose to bring that as your entry point into the book?
Well, I'll tell you, I tossed around many different options. I wrote the book because I run a business. I'm a busy interior designer. I didn't have time to just sit down and write the whole book in one go. I did it chapter by chapter. So at the beginning, I had 24 different chapters and I was juggling them. How should I start it? How should I end it? I hadn't done the epilogue yet because I just wasn't ready to face that. But the beginning was, that how do I start? And I asked people, I actually, asked like my husband, I asked my children, and there were always different answers. Some people wanted me to start with the airport scene, where, almost like that movie Taken with Liam Neeson, where they're rushing through the airport and they're going to, the FBI, and they're going to stop the plane. And a lot of guys thought that. And then other people wanted me to do it chronologically. And I'm thinking, well, why would they want to read about a teenage girl going to college? That's a stupid way to begin. Then it occurred to me, I want to give my readers hope. And it's a pretty scary book. And if I give them that day, that was the happiest day of my life. That was the scariest day of my life. That was a defining day in my life. And I thought, I'm going to give it to the audience at the beginning. And I think it will make them want to hear the full story. And that's how I decided.
Well, it certainly caught my eye, and I think it's going to catch the eye of a lot of viewers, readers, I should say, out there. And I think they're really going to enjoy that because it's a very, very powerful beginning, and it's a great way to start the book. And like you said, you could have done the other airport scene, or that airport scene, which would have been just as powerful. But I like the reuniting of the family. That's really good. So, all
Yeah, I
right.
gave them
What else?
hope.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, you were married to the gentleman. I want to make sure I pronounce his name right. Was it Rahman or Rahman?
Rahman. Rahman.
Rahman, okay.
Yes.
So you were married to a gentleman named Rahman. Now, what attracted you to him, and why were you in such a hurry to marry this Saudi Arabian gentleman?
Well, okay. I was 18 and I fell madly in love. And you know what? That's kind of my personality. I I fell in love and I just couldn't think of anything else, couldn't think of I mean, I really it probably was hormones. I was 18. He was so unique. There was so much about him that I liked. He was intelligent, he had this British accent, he was educated. He liked going out, he liked meeting people. You know what I liked? He wasn't small-minded at the time. He was worldly, he knew people from many different countries, he wanted to share everything with me, he was generous, and we talked all the I mean, we really it was a nice relationship. If Saudi Arabia didn't exist and he had been just living in America, it would have been, a much different ending, okay? Um, and all my friends another thing, okay, you're young. All my friends were impressed with him. Everybody like, it was like I had gotten the prize. Women were like, "Oh, I knew" every time I'd mention him, people would, "Oh, I know him, I knew him, I saw him. He talked to me like" he was like a celebrity. He really was, and I fell for that.
Wow, that's interesting. Okay. There was a lot of flash with him and a lot of worldliness and everything else, no doubt about it. You know, you, you eventually ended up marrying him, okay, and, yet you were getting a lot of conflicting advice from people, and not necessarily your parents, because they didn't really didn't know the whole thing. People from in Saudi Arabia were saying, "Are you sure you wanna move here? Really? Do you know what you're getting yourself into?" And I remember one scene where you said, "Oh, I don't wanna talk to that lady. She's just so negative and everything else," and, wh why did you just poo-poo their what they were trying to tell you? You didn't care about it too much.
Okay, well, why did I do that? Okay, first of all, I was in love. So you'd have to tell me that he was a mass murderer and prove it before I would have fallen out of love, or he would have had to like hit me or something. That's how I mean, otherwise I was all in. But I will say that I did get a lot of positive reinforcement. For example, Valerie. She was like, "Oh, Patricia, you're gonna have servants, you're gonna have a beautiful house, nothing to want for. We travel, we do this, we do that." And that sounded really appealing. And it wasn't so much the money. I think it was the idea that we could go anywhere and go out to nightclubs. I was madly in love with disco dancing and nightlife. That was really what I was into. I don't know. That was me. That was me at 18, 19, 20, 21. Walking into that disco was like the thrill of my life every night. Dancing and he would take me everywhere. So my friends, if some of my friends said, "Oh, you should be afraid or what are you doing this for?" I didn't listen to them because I felt they don't know what I want. They don't know what makes me tick. So I kind of, that's how I felt. No, my parents were totally against it at first. But then they met the family and they thought, "Oh, well, they seem like fine people." They really did think they were nice people. A little bit odd, a little bit conservative, a little bit, but they liked them. And they felt that they could see that it appeared that the family was uh, r respected me and was impressed with me and was happily accepting their son marrying me, and that's an important thing too. There was a lot of positive okay, there was negative, but not like there is today. First of all, Islam had not been politicized yet. Islam was just another religion like Buddhism, literally Buddhism, Zoroastrianism, all of those Eastern religions. Who knew? Who knew? So, today it's a different thing. It really puts you in a different camp, but at the time, that wasn't really what it was. And I wasn't afraid. I'm 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 more cautious as an adult today, but in those days, I was like a crusader. I really was. I was a crusader. I was rebellious. I was a little young for the hippie generation, but I rejected my parents' values, a lot of them. I rejected, just a lot of things. And in some way, I wanted to get away. I wanted to like break free of my strict upbringing. I ended up in a stricter place, but I don't know. I just wouldn't listen. And
Okay.
that's it in a
Now,
nutshell.
so people are aware, what year were you married?
I was married in 1979.
1979. So this is well before we had the internet, well before we had anything other than the encyclopedia, which wasn't going to tell you that much anyway. And so it's hard to get information about Saudi Arabia or any place back then, not like now. Made it difficult. Yeah.
Right, exactly, and I had traveled with my family. We had gone all over Europe, which is something, and we'd gone to Mexico. I would say going to Saudi Arabia was more like venturing to, like, some someplace in Africa or something, dirt roads, nobody speaks English, a different culture, nothing I recognized. Maybe it would be like, comparable to an American person going on, to the Peace Corps and coming, I was shocked when I landed and got out of the airplane. It was very surprising. Nobody really, explained that to me.
Yeah. That was a scene, wasn't it? Yeah. My God, they usher you through here come the whole phalanx of people, and then you find out they go through all your clothing and your everything else, and wow,
They were very
wow,
strict. They were
it's
very
very
strict,
that's
and they it was it
very
was it was really relentless. Everything they did, you had to be careful of everything. They didn't allow art in the country, no art. It's part of the religion. They don't like the what do they call it? The image, the image of anything. It's like you're trying to beat God by painting a dog or a face or I don't know. I never really understood that. I thought I was gonna open an art gallery with my master's degree in art history. Maybe I'd sell all this art to these rich Arabs, and I'd have a
yeah,
booming career in art dealing.
yeah.
Okay, those were the fantasies of a 22-year-old.
It happens. It does happen. Well, throughout the book, we made it through made it through immigration there, you made it through the airport, and you get there, and now you start realizing, "Oh my, this is a lot different than what I was expecting and what I'm used to." You wanna talk about some of those significant moments where it really opened your eyes to the differences between Western society and Saudi Arabian society?
Yes. Okay, so it started out with the level of development, which has much improved today. They have an exotically beautiful city with every modern convenience. But at the time, there was nothing. Number 1, there were very few telephone lines. If you were rich, you would have a one wire coming into your estate, your compound with maybe 30 people living there, 40 people, one little line, and there was one telephone. And that telephone, then you bring it out into different extensions. They do that with their own money. They'd say, okay, one in each room. So that was how you spoke on the phone. So you had to wait until the phone was free. In our house, we had one phone line. In the office of my ex-husband's multi-million dollar company, there were 3 phone lines for the entire set of, like, 100 employees. That's how primitive it was with that. Okay, I couldn't call my mom. Sometimes I would pick up the phone, and I would just sit there and wait and wait and wait, and then some Arabic guy would get on. They had operators to connect you internationally, and you'd have to ask for what you wanted to call. Sometimes you get smart talk, back talk from the operator himself, like, "Oh, American girl, American girl." Oh, yeah. I'd be like, "Oh my god, I just wanna call New York, please." And sometimes they say, "We can't, there's no line." So we resorted to writing letters, and I would sit and write letters all day long to everyone I knew. In fact, one of my girlfriends sent me 8 letters that she preserved from the time. I read them often when I was getting prepared to work on the book. I thought, "Let me get back into the mood." Anyway, so it was very primitive in so many ways. No doctors, wouldn't dare go to a hospital. Um, the food, basically lamb, which was I actually like lamb, so that wasn't so bad. But they had very primitive, I wasn't allowed to go to the supermarket because I was a woman. So it was just you can't talk about how many things you didn't have. I said this in the book, you have to start with nothing. Clear your brain, and I'll tell you the 7 things that you can have or do, and that's about it. No shopping, no movies, no theater, no women not allowed in restaurants, no restaurants anyway, women not allowed to walk in the street, no sports, no, I mean, no libraries, no TV. There was one channel on TV, and it was always just showing what the king did every day. The king went into the meeting and he's discussing a new girls' school that will be open next week. That was the news. And then when you bring videos, because we had those video cassettes back in the 80s, you get them and you load your suitcase up with them. Well, forget it. They would take them all when they're inspecting your suitcases. So that you had to figure out a way to smuggle them, but it wasn't easy. So it was just so different. So then there was also the Islam, the Muslim religion, which I did become a Muslim because I couldn't get permission to marry. I was the first lady that had to do that. All the other foreign ladies were still Christians. It didn't, the Muslims have no problem with Christians. At least they didn't in those days. And the only reason they wanted me to change wasn't because they didn't want me to be a Christian. They wanted me to agree to Islam, and the laws are based on Islam, and therefore I have to follow the laws. Laws of divorce, laws of family life, whatever it was. They didn't want any more trouble from these foreign women that were marrying more and more frequently into the culture. So I had to become a Muslim, and I figured because I wasn't particularly religious. So I figured if I'm gonna live here, I'm gonna be with the family, they're gonna have their holidays. I'm not gonna be able to celebrate Christmas here anyway, so I don't need to have that Christianity thing bogging me down. I figured I will just become a Muslim and participate. And believe it or not, at the time, there was a lot of similarity to both Judaism and Christianity in the Islamic religion. They all have a book. They all have another, we have a gospel and we have a Bible. They have a Talmud and the Torah. This was the Quran and the Hadith. There were two books. There were the Ten Commandments, same everywhere. Moses, same everywhere. Abraham, same everywhere. Noah's Ark, all of that stuff. So they believe in all that. And they believed in Jesus, not as a God, but as a prophet. But still, all the stories of Jesus, it's all there. So I was like, okay, well, I'm not believing that a rock is God or a bird can, rule over us as, I'm believing in the same stuff that I was born with and I'm used to it. So I didn't mind. I really didn't mind. Um, but but the way the religion was carried out in day-to-day life was pretty shocking. In Islam, if you steal, they cut your hand off. So you see people walking around with one hand missing. And you say, oh, I guess he's a thief. If you commit adultery, and they don't have to prove it, if three people swear that you did it, you get stoned to death. And I witnessed a lady in the town, and it's not done behind closed doors. It's done right out in the open. I was going into a jewelry store, which was pretty much the only store that I was allowed to enter because it was like locked and private. And so the car was dropping me off. My car was dropping me off there. And I got out of the car. I looked around. I heard shouting and noises. I looked, and there in the square, I witnessed a woman getting stoned to death. It took about 5 minutes. She fell, and soon there was a pile of rocks over her. Everybody was screaming and chanting. It was like being at a football game. And I just I couldn't believe it. I knew you're in the Quran, yes, you get stoned to death, but the Quran was written in the year 600 AD. So this I didn't realize that they actually do it, and they do it publicly. And there were other things like the laws of Islam say that a man has total sovereignty over his wife and his children. And that's actually how they decided to keep my children kidnapped and hostage in that country for 14 years. They weren't ashamed of it because that's the religion. And as far as a father having sovereignty over the wife, a man having sovereignty over his wife, I went to a funeral and I was excited before. I said, "Oh, we're going to a funeral. This is fun. It's called Aza. We're going to the Aza. And what do we wear?" And, "Oh, we wear either white or black." So I'm going along with, "Oh, this is gonna be so culturally interesting." And then as we're in the car driving there, just the women, only the women go to the funeral. There are no men allowed. It was my mother-in-law and 2 sisters-in-laws, and we're driving there, and I said, "Well, who died? You know, an old lady?" And they're like, "No, it's a young woman and her 2 children. She was, strangled. She and her children were strangled with electric cord by the husband, the dad, who believed that his wife had committed adultery." And I said, "Well, wait a minute." And then he plugged them in, and they were electrocuted. I don't know if they were dead when they were electrocuted or if they were just electrocuted after being strangled. But the point is, I said, "Why the 2 children?" And the answer is, "Well, they're probably not his. He doesn't believe they're his." So he did that, and there was no punishment. Basically, the guy lived in Jeddah. We went to the old souk in Jeddah, the old neighborhood where it's like no electricity, like one little wire. There was no air conditioning. The streets were dirt streets. We walked through, and we went up the stairs to this little apartment with no windows. They had like grills over those wooden grills. Like it was so depressing. And there are like 30 women sitting there mourning. And I realized the grandmother was the grandma of both of those young people that, the man, the wife and the husband, because they were second cousins that had married. And he killed his second cousin and killed their 2 children. And he left Jeddah and he went to live in Medina. He fled to Medina, which was an hour away. And that's as much as I knew. And I just thought, "Oh my god, they could kill me. They could kill me."
We go even one step further then. You decide to register that you're living in Saudi Arabia to the American embassy. And to put it on, you got a rather cold reception from the people at the embassy. Why was that? What did they say to you?
Yeah, I was, after seeing a number of things that were really a little crazy, and I actually never told my parents at all about what I'd witnessed. My mom encouraged me in any case because I think she had some Lebanese friends, New York Lebanese descent friends, and they said, "Oh, tell your daughter to go to the American embassy and register her passport." So my mom kept telling me this. And one day, because the British friends that I had that were also married to Saudis would go to the British embassy, and the Italian girl that I knew would go to the Italian embassy, and they would meet other Italians, other Brits. There was a tennis court at the British thing. I was invited there to play tennis by some girls, and it was so much fun. You put on your black shawl and your thing, but you have your tennis outfit underneath. And then once you get in the gates of the British embassy, you could like take off your shawl and now you're just a normal person with your tennis outfit and your tennis racket and you play all afternoon. So I was thinking, "Oh, you know what? I'll meet Americans. That'll be fun." I was longing to have company from America, a company of American women. I like Americans. I'm American. And, I thought our American tennis court is going to be 10 times better than the British because our American embassy was huge. From outside the gates, you'd see the walls. I was like, "Wow, I'm gonna get in there. It's gonna be like Equinox or something. We're gonna play and have fun and, all kinds of things." They had bridge clubs at the other embassies. It was really a very inviting place. So I'd say, "I'm going to the American embassy. I'm going to register my passport, meet other Americans." So I had my chauffeur drive me there, and there were like armed guards at the gate. And I thought, I'm going to do the talking because he didn't really speak English. And they were American soldiers. So I said, "I'm going to register my passport. I'm American." And they looked and they said, "Okay, go through." And we were supposed to go to the consular services. So we got there. It was just like a modest building with just nothing really. These folding chairs lined up and a desk and some Egyptian guys standing there. Nobody was there. Um, as far as, people like me coming to ask for something. And I guess they went there to ask for visas or whatever. So I said, "I'm here. I'm American." "Why I wanna register my passport." And this gentleman, this Egyptian gentleman looked at me, and he was like, "What? What?" I'm like, "My passport. I'm American. I wanna register my passport." And he kinda looked a little confused. He said, "Sit down." And he went into a room, an office, and then about 2 minutes later, an American lady, blonde lady, looked like she might be from the Midwest based on her accent, and she said, "How can I help you? Why don't you come into my office?" So I went into her office, and she said, What are you here for?" I said, "Well, I'm American. My mom told me to register my passport." And she goes, "Why?" I said, "Well, in case there's an uprising or something. I don't know. I would want you to know that I'm here and I'm American in case I go missing." And she said, "Well, that's not what we do here." And I said, "Well, what do you mean?" I'd like to do some activities, meet some American people. Isn't there like a club I could join?" She says, "No, this is not a social facility. This is an embassy." I said, "Well, the British embassy has that, and the Italian embassy has that. I've been to both of them. I've been to parties." She says, "I'm sorry. We have nothing for you." So I said, "Well, I want the American embassy to know that I'm here, and here's my passport." So she said, "Okay, go outside and give it to the gentleman there, and he'll take a photocopy of it if that's what you wish. But we really have nothing to offer you." And then she's like looking at me. I was like, it's really confusing. I said, I'm American too." And she actually looked like she was about to cry. She's like, "Look, I'm very sorry. There's nothing here. You've come to a very scary place. I don't know whatever possessed you to come here, but we cannot help you." And she says, "Just go outside and give them your passport. I'm sorry." And she just pushed me out of her room, and that was the end of that interview. And I'd never told my Saudi family. I was embarrassed. I was ashamed. I was so disappointed. I couldn't believe it. And I understand Americans might be going all over the world and kicking up trouble, maybe in foreign countries, being drunk or being something and being arrested. Maybe that's why our embassy doesn't want to get involved. Maybe, but that doesn't seem right to me because
She called it
everyone
the
else.
worst place she's called it the worst place she's ever worked in 20 or 30 years with the service.
Yes, she did. She says, "I've been working my whole life in this in embassies, and this is my worst place. I can't wait to leave. There's nothing here for us."
You know you talk about the drinking and the drunkenness, and your husband turned into an alcoholic, and it was quite surprising to you, but yet it seemed like the family never questioned what he was doing. What I didn't understand that.
There's a sovereignty. Once a man becomes a man, the family tries to, get them to not disgrace this family, okay? They are urged to act appropriately and don't disgrace our family. The girls are prevented from disgracing the family. They will be killed if they disgrace the family, okay? But the men are, because they're sovereign over their lives, they give the men such privileges that the women don't get. The men can act badly, and the family kinda hushes it up, and the father can't really impose his will over his son, his grown son. It's a very odd system. It I guess I accepted that that's the way they are, and I thought, "Well, how can I fit in or keep myself safe?" And there came a point where I really didn't think I could fit in and keep myself safe. And I think had we stayed on there instead of going back to the States to Washington, DC, so my husband could attend law school, I think I would have probably waited till our next vacation and then split and filed for divorce. We had no children, there was nothing preventing me, but I kept thinking of how much I loved him, and I don't know, I just wanted to keep giving it a shot, giving it a shot. Maybe things will change, and he warned me. People say he warned you in the book. You say that he said, "This is your choice. I don't recommend you living here. You know, it's a hard country. You're not gonna have the things you want." But I thought he was just trying to remove blame from himself. He could tell me, "I warned you. I can't do anything to help you." And that's kind of what he did. He said, "Look, I warned you. What am I supposed to do? I can't fix this for you." And, I felt it was hard. It was a hard conundrum.
Do you think he was surprised when you were actually then accepted and said, "I'm gonna marry you
Probably,
no matter what"? Yeah.
probably, probably. But he did. There were other, excuse me, there were other men, other Saudi men. Okay, my husband had this very powerful personality, and he was very stubborn and very headstrong. Okay, there were other men, other Saudi men that were completely different, and they had foreign wives, and they were so nice to them. They'd say, "Oh, I'm sorry, sweetie, that you can't walk in the street. Oh, I'll take you and buy you a new necklace, and we'll make it up to you on the next time we go away on vacation. Wherever you want to go, I'll take you." I mean, they were treated like that. I was not. I don't know why. He got harsher and meaner and more, you know, threatening the more I lived there. So I was very glad when he announced that we are moving to Washington, D.C. Okay. So that is, I would have been divorced and I would have had a story to tell, but a very different story. I would have said, I came, I looked, and then I left. And that would have been the story.
Right. And your both children then are born in the United States.
Yes. My two children,
Okay.
I would have not had a child there. I would not have, the hospitals weren't, I mean, I had to have a cesarean section. I would have never had a child there. Never. Um, I would so I didn't even think about children. We were married for 7 years. We were going through rocky times and weird times, and I kept saying, "No, well, I don't know, should I, shouldn't I?" And then we got into a place of smooth sailing when he started with the horses. I love horses. He loved horses. We were always going to, it became, all the issues melted away. I was welcome at all the polo matches. I handle horses beautifully. I know how to take care of them. I drive the truck and trailer. I did so much of the stuff that I love to do, and he was thankful that I was helping him out with all his things. I helped him with his law school. I used to type his papers for him. I did a lot, and we were getting along so well. We were a team. So that's when I had my 2 children.
Okay. Now, he comes to America. You come back to America from your law school. Once that happens, what year was that?
1982?
Okay.
I think 82.
Does he work at all after that?
Okay. He first of all, his family, now he was no longer working. His family happily bankrolled everything. They bought us a beautiful townhouse, in DC on Embassy Row. We had cars, we had live-in housekeepers, we had everything. He went to school every day. He dragged out his law degree. He did it a JD, which is the 2 years, an LLM, which is some other thing, and a PhD. So he had every possible law degree that you could figure out. And I was always thinking, I'm not going to ask the question, but if he's taking all these law degrees in America, obviously he's going to be practicing law in America. And it turned out that when he was graduating, he landed a very prestigious job in an international law firm. And I was thrilled. I was able to, he was out of the house all day. I could carry on whatever I wanted. I had my little interior design business with my best friend, and we were having fun with that. And he would go to his law. In fact, I I have to emphasize, I didn't put this in the book, but when he got his first, I mean, there were moments of sensitivity in this man. He got his first paycheck, and I think it was like, I don't know, $1,500 or something, $2,000 for wo he brought it home, and he was almost in tears, and he was so proud, and he says, "I'm not cashing it, I'm framing it." I'm like, "Wait, it's like $2,000. Let's cash it, and then we can frame it." He goes, "No, I'm framing it." He was really proud that he had done something. He worked for it. He was proud. He'd earned the money himself. It wasn't his family paying him money or his dad sending him money, wiring him money. It was the money he earned, and he kept that paycheck framed in his office. He didn't I really believed we were staying there and we were different than we'd been in Saudi. I felt that this was going to be our life. So that's why, again, that's why I had my 2 children. I didn't marry a freak that was torturing me and then have children with him. I married we went into difficult situations. I thought we came out of them. We were in DC, and now it was smooth sailing, and I really did believe that.
Okay. So you have 2 children, but things have gotten worse by the end. He gets to have at least, 1 or 2 girlfriends, paramours, whatever, and, the time has come, and now you decide you wanna do one thing. He's down in Florida, you have the kids up in Washington, or then he gets them for a while during the divorce, and he ends up basically kidnapping the kids. And the FBI is at the airport. Wouldn't have mattered, but they didn't seem to give a damn about that. They were more concerned that your mother had called something and said there's a problem.
Yeah, this country never reacted the way I don't know, I guess I'm naive, but we thought, this would be something the FBI would care about, 2 American children getting kidnapped. They didn't, and it was very and the reason more importantly, let's back up. The reason those 2 children, ages 2 and 4, were released to him with unsupervised visitation, okay? Unsupervised. A Maryland judge said those children, there's no need to have supervision. He's never kidnapped anyone. Why would you accuse? They thought I was a crazy woman that was just making up crazy stories, hysteria. Unfortunately, sometimes the law looks at people that way. And, so they gave my children, and basically within an hour of him having them, he basically put them in the car and lied about where he was going. The nanny was there with them. He said, "You just do the ironing. I'm gonna take the kids out to dinner." And they never came back. I did not see them for 14 years.
Yeah. Was the judge a male or female?
It was a male. I'm going to say one thing, and I actually just remembered it. When we first started litigating, we started in Washington, D.C. I got this very staid older gentleman, John Long, who was well known for his international law um, career, and I hired him. My ex-husband hired a woman. It was a law firm. Because he'd been in law school, this was someone that his law school friends recommended, and it was a female. And she represented him until he kidnapped the children. And then she said, I can't represent him anymore. He lied to me. He did. So I will admit that there was a female lawyer that quit the case, but it was a little too late. He got another law firm to represent him because he needed whatever to respond. But the funny thing is I was not divorced because I'm American and I had to get a proper divorce in order to ever go on with my life. He actually took the kids, fled the country, went to Saudi Arabia. He got them both Saudi passports. Just they didn't even say who's the mother. They just said, "Oh, these are his sons and he's an important man, so we believe him." So both my children got Saudi passports, so now they're thrown at my in-laws and they were raised by them. And he, divorced me, and the way he divorced me so that he was free, he just had to go in front of, a few witnesses and say, "I divorce her," and then a month later, "I divorce her," and then another month. And that was to make sure the reason for those 3 times is that in case the woman's pregnant, you give her a few months to make sure she's not pregnant because you can't divorce a pregnant woman. You've gotta be the husband until after she gives. None of that really had any, relation to what was actually happening because I was an American, he was in Saudi, but he did get a divorce, and he sent me a piece of paper saying that, he was divorced from me, and he put it into the law case. So now he was divorced from me, but I was still married to
You were
him
still married to
from
him?
my
Yeah,
country.
yeah.
So now I had to go through 2.5 years of we'd send the litigation papers to him. There was no response. We'd have to last known address. We'd have to wait 3 months. Then we could go on to the next step. It took 2.5 years. I had to sell everything I had in my house, furniture, clothes, whatever I had, jewelry, to get all this money to go to the State Department, to go to the, finish up the divorce. It was an unending thing. It took years for me until I was finally free and totally broke. That was my end of it.
Couple things here. You know, first of all, any has there been any change in international law with the kidnapping of children? And if so, if not, what would you recommend, or what does your experience show you should be the law?
Okay. So I was asked to be on a podcast about 2 months ago that was going over international law. And they asked, did I understand the laws? And I said, yeah, well, I think I do because I had to be, I had the lawyers helping me years ago. Well, what I did in preparation was that I looked it up. I Googled it. I looked it up. There are several law firms that specialize in that in Washington, D.C. I looked at what they said and I realized nothing has changed. Since 1989, when my children were kidnapped, nothing has changed. There is one law, one set of laws that deals with international child abduction. That is the Hague Convention. It is a treaty. I think it was written in like 1980. So my children fall within the Hague Convention, 1989. But Saudi Arabia did not sign and will never sign because they believe in their Islamic law and nobody's imposing any other law on Saudi people. So I wish I'd known that because everyone told me, "Oh, you're American. You don't have to, you're American. You can force the king, force the king of Saudi Arabia to release your children." No, they don't recognize me at all. So that now I have actually joined the board of directors of an organization called Find My Parent, and I've been doing this for the past few months. Um, they are trying very hard to bring this issue to the forefront, and I'm hoping that somehow my book and the interviews I give will show you that a person like me got affected by this. I had a friend years ago who was she wrote articles for magazines and she wanted to write my story in Pink magazine. And it was before I'd gotten my children back and she wanted to the gist of her article, because she's American, she was going to say, American ladies, don't marry a Saudi or don't marry these kind of men because you will lose your children and they will take them out of your country and you will lose them in their. And I said, no, I'm not letting you write that article. She said, why? I said, because that's not what happened. You've just twisted the whole thing. His country protected him. My country didn't protect me. So we're not going to make it that they're bad. People are allowed to have their own rules. Everybody can't be on American standard. They have their laws. They have their rules. My country should have, number one, I wish it was more known that this country will not protect you. They won't protect you. And they really should admit it and let our citizens know that you're on your own and see how that hits the American public. You're on your own. So I really hope that this, Find My Parent. I mean, we should somehow come to some agreement, everybody wants to be so international these days. Oh, it's a world, all cultures are equal, everything's hunky dory. It isn't. It isn't. I'm living proof of that.
Right. Well,
Okay.
that's powerful message you give to everybody about both your kids, about what it's like to live in another country, etc. And now for the most bizarre ending. And just very briefly, you get invited to come to London you've now reunited with your son and daughter, and they say, come to London because grandpa wants to talk or he's having wants to have dinner because he's having a procedure in London, and you go over and I was floored. I can imagine how you felt. Tell us just a bit about that.
Okay. Well, my son Kareem, when he came, he was very overjoyed to reunite with me, and we've seen each other, and we have a very good relationship. But he really didn't wanna get me any more involved with his family. He felt that he preferred to know me in the West, and he visited me. He never encouraged me to come to Saudi Arabia or, anything like that. Now, my daughter is actually the reason why that meeting occurred. She, Sultana, um, kept trying to draw me back into the family, and I believe it's because all the ladies of the family, the aunts and the cousins, were all curious to know me. They wanted Sultana to have her mother, and they wanted me to know them, and they were very warm to me. So this all started when my ex-husband's sister, much younger sister, 20 years younger, came to America because she was having fertility issues or whatever. She came to New York purposely because she wanted to know me better, and Sultana encouraged it, and I got very friendly with Imama, that was her name, and we would go to her hotel. Then she rented an apartment, so my daughter Amanda and I would go visit Imama, and she was there for a few months, and then, she would come back every 6 months to visit with her doctors, and she would go back, no doubt. I mean, I'm not 100% sure of this, but I'm 99% sure she would go back and tell lovely stories about me to her older parents. And they were they were like in their 70s by that point. And she said, Patricia's so lovely. Patricia has this lovely daughter, Amanda. Amanda comes and sits with us. She's so sweet. They would send jewelry to my daughter, Amanda. They sent like a little yellow canary diamond ring with a matching bracelet. My daughter was floored. She's like, wow, they're sending me diamond jewelry. The ladies of the family wanted to make it up and support Sultana to be with her mother and show Sultana. So they did try to do that, and they actually succeeded. So then Sultana goes one step further, and I think the women of the family talked to Abdullah and said how lovely I was. So he came to New York, and he came several times, actually. I didn't put that in the book because it was becoming repetitive, but we did meet up and he would speak. Then he decided on his own he's having a family dinner because I think when he went back to Saudi, I think he heard talk like that, about me being bad and so bad, and the children shouldn't be in America with their mother and whatever it was. So I think he decided to put an end to all of that talk because he was the oldest male of the family and he was in control also of the money. So they had to listen to him. So that's why he decided to do that. So it was under the encouragement of my daughter. And I think he did it. I know he did it for my children's sake. So he got everyone together. I was truly shocked. And he got up and he never did that. He was a quiet guy, very serious man, very religious man. And he said that I am their mother, even though my ex-husband kept saying, oh, she's just a silly woman. She's nothing. I raised them. I'm their mother. The grandmother is their mother. So he put an end to all that and he said, this is their mother. She's a wonderful woman. She's a great woman. She's a beautiful woman. She's an intelligent woman. She's a fine woman. Mama Inja and I loved her from the moment we saw her. And everyone was shocked, but he put that to rest. He decided that for the family. And I was so choked up. I can't even read. I must have edited that book 40 times. I still can't read that chapter without crying because this whole thing was so needless. It was just the whole kidnapping, the way my children were raised, everything. I really feel like it didn't have to happen that way, but it did. That's the tragedy of it. It's just two cultures that just don't mix. Somebody could have interfered with it or helped us, but nobody would help. Nobody could help, and it was a real shame. And that's why I cry because I feel like, wow, they actually liked me, but they couldn't do anything because their laws and their rules. Like my husband had complete sovereignty over his 2 children, and that's the end of that. Nobody's gonna interfere, not even his own family. So that was the end. That was my story. And it was a hard time for me to write that. I also had to clear it with my children. Told them I'm writing this book. My son goes, "Look, it's your story. Go, you can tell it." My daughter was scared. She thought it might have repercussions for her because, of course, the girls always take the brunt of these things in that country. But she's okay. She lives in New York now, and she's doing fine.
Wonderful. Well, listen,
Yeah.
we have gone way past. I mean, you just had this story just keeps going and going. We could go on another hour. I mean, this is
Yeah,
an
no,
amazing
there's a
book.
lot in the book. I packed a
Yes, there
lot
is.
in, but
Oh my.
each chapter gives a different,
Yep.
um, a different theme.
Revelatory. That's what it is. You revealed a lot. You've taught us a lot. You've had to live through this, and I appreciate what you've done because I know it had to be a hardship to write all this and bring this back up. But anyway, I wanted to say thank you for coming on today and sharing some of this about your book, Jeddah Bride. Thank you so much, Patricia Bonis.
Oh, I am so happy that you've given me the opportunity to answer so many interesting questions. I loved your questions, and I appreciate that I was able to speak about it. Thank you.
Well, friends, if that wasn't an eye opener, I don't know what is. Okay, this book is revelatory. It tells us a lot what it is. It is every page I read, friends, every page I couldn't believe what I was seeing, what I was reading, what this poor woman had to go through, you know, and we can all maybe say something pro or con or whatever, but the bottom line is she had to live that life and she did the best she possibly could. And then she had her kids, her two children kidnapped from under her. Well, I'm going to tell you what, what a brutal, brutal situation that was for the poor woman. And, if you have any friends, you want to recommend this book to them because it's something you really want to pay attention to. It's a very, very, very fine book. So anyway, on behalf of my good friends at booktrib.com, on behalf of my good friends at Podcast Studio X, this is Blaine DeSantis for Books and Looks saying, may all your leaves be pages in a book.